Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Viewers Questions. I'm a life coach and I decided to start this new feature on the channel because we talk a lot about life on the channel. In the comments, the songs elicit that sort of response and thoughtfulness when you hear a George Jones song or whomever. So I decided to start this feature. It's been well received so far and you've been sending me your questions. So if you have a question, you can email it to me, like a concern. You can email it to me at rockintocountry@gmail.com, or you can leave it in the comments if it's not too personal or won't reveal something about another person that people might be able to identify if you were to leave it there. So anyway, just be sensitive to sort of asking your questions without throwing anyone under the bus. But the first question I got is, can you, if you are self-aware, help yourself out of depression? Is medication the only answer? And the answer to that question is medication is not the only answer for everybody, but it is the only answer for some people. Because thinking alone, contemplation alone can help. The way, especially if you're self-aware, not everybody is that self-aware, but if you're self-aware, you can pay attention to how you're formulating your thoughts. If you tend to be negative anytime politics comes up or anytime anything, oh, it's raining and you get a negative thought, you can interrupt that thought and just say, no, what's good about rain? I like rain. Like over time, you can sort of rearrange how you process life. You get like a paradigm shift. But the human body breaks down over time, okay? So as much as willful thinking can change your mood or how you feel about things, it is not the end-all be-all of the brain itself breaking down, for example. Just like our skin deteriorates and our joints do and our teeth do, the brain does too, even though we don't see it. Shortly after puberty, the brain is comprised of trillions of brain cells, but it's theorized millions of brain cells die every day. And it's not that big of a problem when you're talking about trillions of brain cells, but it just depends on which ones and other factors that impact the brain. So I'll just give you a brief overview of how depression, in a sense, can work. There are naturally occurring chemicals in the brain that regenerate or replenish, especially when you sleep. And these regulate mood. They're just called mood regulators, basically, and they're naturally occurring. Your body produces them, like serotonin. There are dopamines that make you feel good when something great goes on. And many of these replenish at night. So the brain is on average 3% of the body's mass. And an average human being, the brain weighs about 3 pounds. The average person, I guess in America, weighs about 150 pounds. So somewhere 2 to 3% of the body's mass is taken up by the brain. But the brain uses roughly 20% of the body's energy. You've got the heartbeat, the lungs, the involuntary functions working. But when you talk, when you walk, that all is caloric burn, and that's energy. So at night, the cranial cavity, there's fluid that builds up in the brain during the course of the day, and when you sleep at night, that fluid drains out of the brain and sort of you start your day afresh. So if you're not sleeping well at night, for instance, or if you stay out partying or whatever, like you just don't get enough sleep, that's going to impact your mood and how much strength you have to challenge your own thoughts on things. And as we know, like sleep deprivation is like, it's actually been used in wars and such when prisoners of war are taken as like torture. Because when you don't get enough sleep, you do not think and you do not feel well. And you can actually induce like a depression. You might be able to come out of it with sleep, but sleep, as we know, is so important to the replenishment of the chemicals in the brain. There's a study that they did, they experiment on mice all the time, the poor mice, but where they had one set of mice had normal conditions, food, water, everything they needed. They could sleep whenever they wanted. Another set of mice had the exact same conditions, food, water, the whole thing. The only difference was anytime they started to fall asleep, a stimulation was introduced into their environment that would wake them up. So they were deprived of sleep, and they wanted to see what would happen if you just deprived them of sleep. Well, within a few days, actually, but certainly within a week, their fur started to fall out. Within 2 weeks, they started to have like serious abrasions on their skin, and within 3 weeks, they were all dead. So same conditions, food, water, and everything, but that just speaks to the regenerative process that takes place in the human body. Like if you want to talk on evolutionary terms, you look at sharks, they don't sleep. And we've studied like why, and it's theorized that, well, at night, we use our eyes for about 80% of our information input, and at night we can't see well, so it's best to conserve energy. So the human body started to sleep. The human beings just started to sleep to conserve energy. But however we could figure out ways that are reasonable of explaining why it is we sleep, we all know that we need sleep because it regenerates these chemicals that affect our mood. You know when you don't get a lot of sleep that you're in a bad mood. Now, sleep alone, though, won't overcome a full depression. There may be neurological pathways that are being interfered with in ways, and that is outside my pay grade. A guy like David Emsweiler, he would understand more about this than I would. But you can improve your mood by how you approach, how you sort of philosophize your view of life. If you come up with sort of a life philosophy. I've said this on videos, and I do this in my life coaching as well, that one of the biggest bugaboos that people don't like to contemplate or think about is the actual act, not the act of dying, but death, because it is literally a macabre, morbid subject. But if we're going to improve the quality of our life, my disposition has been that we need to come to some degree of acceptance of the fact that we're going to die one day. Find a way to not be freaked out by it too much, because it's one of those unexplored worlds for us. All we know as cognitive human beings that we're alive. Life is good, it's bad at times, but we're alive. The idea of what is after death, spiritual considerations aside, we still don't know what the state of death is like. And most of us just sort of like recoil at that because it is a bizarre notion because all you've known is life. But if we sort of get a somewhat of a handle on it without becoming goth and overly like consumed with it, but a certain acceptance of it, it will also regulate how we process the bad things that happen in life, because you can think, well, yeah, this is a horrible time, but there is a time coming that it will end. And it will also regulate the good times in a certain way where like we might get unduly attached to things that maybe shouldn't be bringing us too much joy or something, or just happiness, or, maybe we think, oh, money and the big house and all this. But there's a time that that's going to come to an end too. So my theory or my idea, my approach is that generally speaking, if you have that there, because it is knowledge that we know of what's coming in the future, that it can kind of like, instead of going up, down, or just all down, it can kind of even things out a little bit. So that's one way to approach thinking about life. But the chemicals that we call those mood regulators, as I said, those can also diminish. The part of the brain and body that contribute to producing those, like the serotonin and the dopamines and others that sort of make you feel good, those processes can break down a bit over time as well. And there are medications that are available to sort of alleviate that. So some of those chemicals can be fairly accurately replicated in the lab. Everybody responds to these, even though they're sort of bioidentical, if you want to call them that. They're close to it anyway. Everybody's body's going to receive that differently. So the answer to that question is not everybody's problems can be addressed merely by thinking themselves out of it. There can be an actual physiological depletion within the brain or other parts of the body or the nervous system that contribute to what we call depression. The brain is just way more complex. I mean, we know a lot more about it now with MRI and fMRIs and all these imagings and experiments that they've done or studies that they've done, but it is still arguably the most complex thing that we've ever looked at. So that was question one. Here's question two. Have you ever felt guilty for not spending more time with your kids? If so, have you found there is a healthy balance between spending all your free time with them and tackling all the other adult responsibilities? Well, and this is a common one. Like, life is about balance. Like, I've been convinced for decades that There's a verse in the Bible that says, let your moderation be made known to all people. And people have said that likely that's talking about drink. I think a better translation of that text is, be in balance to such an extent that other people can see it. Because you know when somebody's out of balance on something in life, whatever it may be. Maybe they work too much. Maybe they play too much. Maybe they drink too much. Maybe they watch too much TV, whatever. You could tell. Maybe they exercise too much. You're like, dude, you're overdoing it. Or, girlfriend, you're overdoing it. You could tell when somebody's got a pretty good sense of balance. We generally call them well-grounded. So there is a balance to be struck between kids. If you spend no time with your kids, this is horrible. If you spend like all your time with your kids, this is also bad because they need a break from you. As much as you enjoy being with them, and some parents, we call them helicopter parents, just want to direct all their activities, kids really need time to be creative on their own. And so if you've got to fix that back porch one day, it's good for the kids to see, hey, daddy's fixing the back porch, or mom's doing this or whatever, because that's important too. And that's one way that they learn that life changes. They do. They take it in. They may not process it exactly the way we do as adults. In fact, they're not. But they could say, well, playtime ends at some point, and having seen mom and dad do that, take care of these adult responsibilities is important. But once you have kids, I mean, what is the quote? I forget who said it, but it's like, the moment you give birth, you never take a free breath after that the rest of your life. You're always worried. I mean, if you have a conscience toward your kids, you're always worried. Here's one bit of advice that I do give to parents. There is no perfect parent. There's no perfect set of circumstances to make your kids just right, whether you fight to get them in that the correct math group in school, or the higher level dance team in the ballet studio, or whatever it is. What the kids will remember in life is that you loved them and they felt safe in your presence. That's what they'll remember. You can make mistakes with your kids, but kids also process other people as either mean or nice. And I don't think we give that up, even as we get older. We may use more colorful language as we get older. In fact, we do. But kid language is really effective. They really break it down as like, that person's mean or nice. So you don't want to come down on this side of mean, because that just digs at their soul. It digs at adult souls too. But if you're generally kind, every so often you're going to slip up because you're tired and they're driving you crazy and they did something you shouldn't have done, and then they broke the jar in the kitchen, and you're going to pop up. That's fine. That's going to happen. But if they know that you've had their back, that you love them, that you give them a kiss on the top of the head when you drop them off at school, even when you're mad at them, or maybe once in a while you don't do it so they really get the point that they screwed up, that's fine. As far as spending, there is a balance to be struck, and it's not easy. Every household is different. When you've got one child, it's easier to apportion your time with the child. When you've got two, they're fighting with each other now, and suddenly you're working on a project where you just get home from work and they're fighting. Now you got to referee that. When you've got 3, 4, and 5, you're no longer concerned about this equitable distribution of love and all that. You're just concerned about getting them home alive at night, preferably with all the clothes and books and all their items that they started the day with, because you just can't do it all. So your responsibilities shift when you have more children as well. I mean, just preparing dinner for 5 or just going to the store lugging 3 kids in the car is a much different endeavor than just one. So it's all circumstance. It depends on your circumstances. So no, you're not going to spend all your free time with them. They need a break. They need creative time themselves. They need a break from you, just as you need a break from them. You need to be able to formulate complete sentences, which can be difficult. Any mother who stays at home with their 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds realize they're not even talking in complete sentences, and they just love getting with other adults on occasion just so they can rewire their brains and be an adult again. So there's a balance. There's no magic formula. If you make your kids feel welcome in their own home, then that's like one of the biggest things. Make them feel welcome, make them feel safe, and you take care of your adult responsibilities. They'll be all right. And the third question is, Have you ever listened to Thomas Sowell on YouTube? And the answer is yes, I have. Quite a bit, actually. I was a philosophy major at Rutgers, which is always ranked either number 1 or number 2 in the country and number 2 or 3 in the world in philosophy departments. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew I loved it. And the reason I point that out is because Thomas Sowell has been viewed more like as an economist, but he's a philosopher. I mean, he's at the Hoover Institute out at Stanford University, and he's absolutely brilliant. He doesn't seem to forget a fact. He doesn't forget an anecdote. He doesn't forget historical movements. He's just absolutely brilliant. And perhaps the most impactful quote, saying, or perspective that I've ever taken from him, he said in one interview, he said, there are no solutions to problems. There are only trade-offs. And that was so well put, and it informs me in my life coaching, and I share this with people when I do my personal coaching, where if you're looking for an ideal solution to a problem, and you have perfectionistic tendencies, when you start to contemplate solutions and you realize there's a problem with this one over here, you're going to dismiss it. Your perfectionistic characteristics or qualities or proclivities are going to dismiss that one, looking for the perfect solution, the ideal solution. But when you realize that there are no perfect solutions, if you're going to do this thing over here, then you're giving up this, this, and this. One of my philosophy professors said years ago, and I love this perspective, that when you make a positive statement, and I don't mean like cheerleading statement, I mean an affirmative, when you make a statement of something you're going to do, let's say, I'm going to give you this book. You're making a statement, far more statements about what you're not going to do. I'm not going to go practice free throws. I'm not going to watch TV. I'm not doing all these other things. And so there's no perfect solution to things. And Thomas Sowell was the one who actually put that in perspective. But I love hearing, I mean, I've learned so many things about slavery that I never knew about, from Africa and how it originated there, civil rights movements and, the economic policies and a lot of things. So yes, Thomas Sowell is one of the most brilliant minds. And to me, he's just a philosopher. He considers a lot of information. He puts it together, sort of like congeals it or coalesces it, just boils it down. And in interviews, now, and I like his style. He's not loud. He doesn't come across to me at all as obnoxious or self-righteous. He just says, here's the information. You want to argue with the information, you want to argue with statistics or what have you, then you're free to do that. But your argument is weakened by the fact that these statistics, for example, exist and you're not accounting for them. So that's it. I love those questions, folks. Leave more for me. And I love doing these. This really is my passion in life, is the life coaching, but being able to talk about it on this level with folks. So I hope that helps. And I look forward to your questions. Have a great day. See you on another video, hopefully a life coaching video.